What is a spear? Picture one now in your mind. You might think of it as a long wooden shaft with a steel, bronze or stone tip. You would look at that and see a spear. But if you threw that spear at an animal and wounded him, at no point would he think to throw it back at you. And this is even after seeing you demonstrate its use and personally feeling its effect. Because a spear is not actually an object. You can name an object a spear, but a spear is actually a concept. It is a tool with which to engage a target from afar. This ability to conjure the abstract is what truly defines the human being from the rest of Earth's life forms. Some animals are beginning to grasp the concept of tools, but they're nothing on us. We are able to look at the world and see an entirely different realm of existence. If we fall into a basement with no obvious way out, we can see the staircase that can be built from the boxes around us. Many have noticed that Western society is stagnating, if not tearing itself apart. People seem too quick to refuse compromise and dialogue, and instead devote themselves to some flag, whether that be a political faction, ideology, or superficial identity trait. This is a defensive behavior. People know that something is wrong, and that they are somehow under threat. They don't know what it is or who is to blame, so they desperately cling to whatever footing they can, while striking out at any within reach. Societies are breaking apart. Friendships and families are breaking apart, because individuals themselves are being torn apart from the inside. But torn apart by what? In this video, I'll be explaining my theory on how we delude and sabotage ourselves through a subconscious habit for applying narrative to all things. When misdirected, this habit can propel us down dangerous funnels of self-deception. I explore how this applies to our current disruption, what we as individuals might do to reverse this, and perhaps even use it as a means to transcend the species itself. Peace or war? Which do you choose? Do you believe that it is better to work together with others to achieve compromise? Or do you feel that's just a waste of time? Do things feel too urgent for that? Is there too much at risk right now? Do your opponents seem too dangerous or stupid to engage in dialogue? Do you feel it might be better to simply force your hand and secure dominance through silencing the opposition? Do you feel obligated to prevent the further spread of their dangerous narrative? It is almost a cliche for people to choose peace over war when the option is made that simple, yet most of what we see in contemporary political discourse is the exact opposite. We have seen what comes from war so many times throughout history. In our movies and books, the good guys have patience. They engage in dialogue and try to meet peaceful resolutions. The warmongers are the bad guys. Yet most of what we see in social media today are the actions of the bad, and they are promoted and applauded by those legitimately believing themselves to be the good. So how about you? What would you do if you gained full authority? How would you save the world? What would your approach be to, say, anti-vaxxers? How about feminists or trans activists? How about conservatives? What do you think of the woke? Do you think restrictions should be placed upon what they say? Should the innocent be protected from their message? I've heard people say that the US Capitol building riot was more devastating than 9/11. So does that make Trump supporters worse than terrorists? If that's the case, how do you now feel about waterboarding? Should those people be allowed to work any careers they choose? Or do you feel it is becoming necessary to restrict that? Perhaps you don't want them teaching children or having a public presence. Perhaps they shouldn't be allowed to make over a certain wage, or they should publicly disclose their income sources or pay more taxes to cover the damage you believe they cause. Perhaps they should wear a patch. What about black site interrogations. Would that be a possibility? Or would that be going too far? What if the situation became really critical? How far are you willing to go to save the world? Are you the bad guy? Have you ever even asked yourself that? Why not? Are you simply incapable of it? If you were born in 1920s Germany or 1200s Mongolia, would you not have just simply gone along with the flow? Why not? What's so special about you? It is those who are not actively watching for their own demon who are the most susceptible to fall into its control. And it is those who believe themselves to be morally superior and their position unquestionable who I believe are already under its control. Society today really does seem to be running purely upon the vitriol sourced from a succession of cheap, fleeting fads. These simplistic little issues seem to spring up one after another, and we give ourselves completely to each in turn as if making the final stand for our very existence. Now, there are issues of existential concern out there, but those aren't what we focus upon. We ignore issues that are too big to deal with to instead draw everyone's attention to what? We throw away friends, break up our families, destroy our careers, compromise anything of actual value over what? What is it really that we're fighting for? I think there is indeed something driving this angst under the surface, something apolitical, non-cultural, something lying beneath even our language. I think that if we are able to grasp that, then maybe we might just find the key to calming things down and working once more towards actual progress. I'm going to be laying out a few concepts I've had in my mind for a while now, but which I've only just started to actually name and structure out. Now, these are concepts. I have no academic background in this field. I don't even know what field this might actually be in, so you'll need to keep that in mind. What I'm starting to see though, is that maybe things rely upon our awareness and balance of three things: the instinct, the abstract, and the logic. Now, each of us tend to have differing leniences towards all three, and society tends to reflect the majority lenience. Instinct is obviously more foundational, though with abstract and logic it becomes more varied. I believe the way we balance our focus upon this triad greatly dictates how we engage the surrounding world, and I will now get down to explaining how. For the majority of our existence, when a group of people with a notably different appearance from us emerged upon the horizon, that was bad news. It meant that for the foreseeable future you were going to be fighting bitterly for everything you held dear. Even the friendly visitors could mean the loss of your entire tribe to disease. Racism, or discrimination in general, evolved for a reason, because the alternative was existential in volume. Now, however, we live in a multicultural world, and this has developed too quickly for those old tendencies of ours to adjust. We must actively train ourselves to counter them. We also need to keep in mind that for the majority of our existence we were not the apex predator on Earth. The predecessors to our species apparently played more of a scavenger role, with themselves living as viable prey. When you watch prey animals, they tend to always be on, ever keeping watch for potential threats. We evolved that same instinct, and despite now being completely dominant and living by far the safest lives of human existence, those instincts have remained. We are still ever searching for threats. So for all our ability to analyze, rationalize, and to plan and to adapt, our instincts still drive us on levels that we're not even capable of noticing. And on top of that, we have developed our ability for abstract. Humanity's ability to conceptualize abstract notions and to see what else can be done is the very reason we are now what we are. It is so integral to us, so a part of our psyche, that we could not divorce ourselves from its influence even should we wish to. This is our greatest asset and our greatest curse. It is the source of all our moments of genius and the fuel for our most crippling psychoses. Leonardo da Vinci commandeered it. Adolf Hitler was controlled by it, and this force compelled both men to levels of exceptional greatness, two opposite ends of the scale. It is the reason why empires rise, why they stagnate, it is why they collapse. That same force fuels that complete cycle. I see it metaphorically as a persistent jet stream of oil blasting up from deep within our core. It is constant and so powerful that if we don't commandeer its potential to our advantage, then our abstract will seek its own muse. In doing so, it blankets our perception of the world. It mixes with our instincts, that paranoia for threat, and aggravates that paranoia by expanding it narratively, building that threat into something far greater than what's actually there. When an individual is able to commandeer their abstract flow, then they are able to pierce the very foundations of reality itself. They use it to find the wormholes of possibility and navigate through the impossible blockages of life. When a society is able to commandeer its abstract flow, they build wonders, they split the atom, and they set foot upon Mars. When an individual is controlled by this force, it can utterly destroy who they are. When a society is controlled by this force, it can send humanity back to the caves. So how is this abstract flow controlled? Well, the answer to that, I think, lies within our focus upon logic. How I define logic is essentially science and technology. It is rational thought, it is language, the techniques we develop, our practical manipulation of all things. It is the scheduling of our time, the precision of our nutrition and exercise routines, our economy, laws, our political systems, the conscious application of our thoughts. No matter how incredible a concept abstract might conceive, we need logic to actually get it done. Logic works out the practical steps, it finds the tolerances, refines the direction, and lays down the building blocks needed to progress. We all know what it is because our modern world cherishes it today as paramount above all other things. We pride ourselves on rationality and method. We dedicate ourselves to the data. I believe this lenience, however, is unnatural for us and comes at our own expense. Now, I am under no illusions in thinking that this has not been ultimately fruitful for our species. Without that dominance of logic, after all, I just simply would not be here right now. We would have no computers, no cameras, no internet. A lot of us wouldn't even be here. But logic is analytical and critical by nature. That's the point of it. That's the value of it. Without an equal or superior counterweight, however, such self-critique can become self-obsessive, if not self-destructive in time. Many might believe that an acute focus upon logic will simply bring all the more refinement and efficiency. That's actually the problem. Any experienced artist or designer will tell you you can very easily refine your work down to the point of sterility, if not utter ruin. Look around you now and tell me our society is not regularly missing the forest for the trees. To obsess over semantics and miss the greater context has become our culture. You might bear the capability to build a starship, but when your ambition looks no further than the horizon, there exists no desire to ever launch. There is no uniting cause, so instead we consider ourselves as individuals first and devote our talents towards quick, easy profits for short-term gain. We simply have nothing else to pursue than ourselves.
What can ordinary people do against the world? 3 stories of 3 nations, of 3 men and a girl. Tacticolo by Danny Stray, available on Kindle ebook and paperback, From an Altered Aspect.
few of us would outwardly say that we are happy, and this goes for regardless for how rich and successful we might be. It's incredibly common for people in the upper echelons to say that money and success have brought them no happiness long term, yet we ignore these lessons and continue to chase the profit because we don't know what else to aim for. For the entirety of our existence, every member of the tribe has needed to pull their weight and contribute for the tribe. Being ostracized meant death, so the people with selfish traits tended to not pass on their genes. People always say the best feeling they get is from when they have contributed. Well, it only makes sense that our physiological reward systems evolved that way. We evolved to serve the tribe. The development of agriculture and the concept of wealth is what began to cloud that, and it is only now in this tiny fraction of our timeline where we have even had the option for self-indulgence. We don't struggle anymore for food or protection. There's no threat in being self-absorbed. We also have a natural relationship limit of about 150 people. It's called Dunbar's number. In this modern world, however, the populations have grown too large for us to keep the greater whole as the priority. So instead, we fall to opportunism. We prioritize our own goals and that of our immediate kin rather than the community overall. With the rise of the specialist, that opportunism narrows our capabilities down into singular, independent pursuits, with little coordination between this one and that. Specialists also all too often blinker themselves and ignore all greater context separate from their fields. They have to in order to excel at what they do. But nothing in nature works in isolation. Nothing does. Every single thing has evolved to function in relation to everything else. You do something here, and it affects there. That's how it will always work. So you see it all the time in the medical industry or agriculture or geopolitics. You hone yourself down a single strand and maybe succeed in that case, but in doing so you devastate another 3 or 4 areas to either side. You still consider that a success, however, because your focus is the one that matters. With the rise of science and specialization, commercialism and strategic marketing, we are now aggressively pulling the species in a billion different ways at once, and it's taking this human project into chaos. Any project manager knows that there must be a central vision in order to keep the project moving in the right direction. Our nations and societies once had that in the form of their respective divine, their gods, their cultural identities. But now, each individual is trying to pull the human project towards their own selfish needs. These needs have also crippled our creativity. We used to build projects lasting hundreds of years, projects greater than us. Contemporary creativity, however, has become very safe. It is retained within short-term achievable limits and works within already proven frameworks of 2 to 3 step processes. You also really need to be making a return on investment by that 3rd step, otherwise it is simply a waste of time within which no value can be found. We seek progression and growth, but not really advancement. We celebrate innovation, but it tends to be more a recreation of what we already know. Anything else is a risk, and risks don't sell. So it's not actually so much innovation, more iteration. You'll hear a lot of people talk about methodical ways to maintain and encourage creativity. You'll see job advertisements searching for creativity and an ability for thinking outside the box. Now, if you take that popular narrative on face value, you would think that creativity was highly praised in this day and age. But what we have now is nothing like what we once had, not the level of abstract humanity evolved around. We used to think regularly of the impossible. I mean to a level that would be generally considered today as borderline insanity. It certainly would not be conducive to commercial gain, and commercial gain is the only thing now of any value. Through a dominant focus upon logic, we optimize ourselves down to a level of methodical stagnancy, like a machine. But a machine cannot adapt, it cannot innovate, it cannot meet and outmaneuver the unexpected. It cannot inspire or aspire, it cannot conceptualize distant goals. It simply repeats and refines what already exists, closing itself within loops of analysis and refinement, leading ultimately to atrophy until finally collapsing into dust. We all know people with an overly indulged abstract. You're looking at one right now. An overly indulged imagination strikes out in all directions like a leaky combustion chamber. It is all potential, but too dispersed and sporadic, never containing enough of itself to effectively launch to any one direction. Now, through the majority of our evolution, that was okay, because people of my lenience held a more revered place in society. The logic wasn't mature enough to counter the crazy ass shit we were saying, and our words inspired wonder in turn. We got people thinking about what else could be done, and sometimes the more practical among us even got them done. But in the last 100 years, through the rise of the merchant, industrialist, and economist, the abstract thinkers have fallen by the wayside without any real attempts being made towards integration. The logically minded have therefore gained all of the voice, seeking only the reasons why something can't be done, and forever doing what they can to keep humanity contained. Ultimately, the result of an overly indulged abstract tends to be pretty benign. It's just sporadic babbling. When logic becomes overindulged, however, then the abstract still flows regardless. Left unmonitored, it can become led by our instinct for ever-seeking threat. That hypothetical threat can then be supercharged by the abstract, and it is there where the logic adds the capability which propels that paranoia down into the realm of bitterness, resentment, and ultimate devastation. How many intelligent people do you see today who seem completely lost to fantastical delusion? How many seem to be painting threats far larger than they are? How many of them are on the opposing side? How many of them are on yours? How often do you do it yourself? How many of the most intelligent people become unbreakable in their convictions? Genius is not an inherently positive trait, because it is the genius who can argue himself into the darkest echo chambers of all. They will always find a reason to support their argument. We have seen this time and time again, and when you look at the political discourse occurring today, we see that now in abundance. We must counterbalance our dominant focus upon logic by directing our abstract towards targets lying beyond reach. Targets of greater value than ourselves, greater value than the individuals, the identities, and the flags. In effectively guiding that, our abundance of logic then becomes an asset of such magnitude that it is capable of propelling our species even beyond reality itself.
Sweet, gentle, innocent heart, what would you hope to become? Now let's throw you to trial, to pain, to exhaustion, betrayal. Let's have you destroy the innocent, the beautiful. Let's make you a commodity, allow others to profit from your demise. Let's take that hope and see now what you become. Jive 3-5, The Story of Our Children's Great War by Danny Stray, available on Kindle ebook and paperback, from an altered aspect.
For the entirety of our existence, we have ever looked upwards to question what that is. Our natural tendency is to apply narrative to all things. We view the world in the context of potential. Through this, there is this, and coupled with this, we achieve that. Everything is a story to us, with cause and effect propelled by intention. Through our repeated application of this formula, we tend to now assume that everything must have a purpose rather than simply being the product of physics and circumstance. So existence itself, to us, must be a story. For if there is no beginning, no end, and no justification for all that happens in between, well, that just means that all this suffering, hardship, and unfairness is for nothing. And that just leaves a void. We can't accept that. Many of us can't even comprehend it. So what we do is build for cards. In early times, with our capacity for logic being so low, our explanations came in the form of spirits and gods. we chose human forms because the world has to work within our framework in order for us to relate to it. Our abstract anchored to these and expanded these, intertwining us further within these narratives to create a purpose greater than ourselves. It gave us an end game lying beyond view. We created the divine, and that became the cause for which we lived. From these foundations, our abstract thinkers ever explored, ever expressed, ever unveiled to the rest of us what else can be done. They refined this narrative through their tales of heroes and cataclysms and great victories. From these we drew our lessons and our inspiration to strive, our societies, our reason to band together and to create wonders and commitments requiring ever greater capacity. So the logic developed in turn. The method would catch up and either entrench one concept over others or enable the followers of one to suppress the rest. Institutions would fall, calcify, and break apart to spring new abstract concepts in turn. With the rise of true empires, institutional religions followed. They repurposed and repackaged those original tales and practices into frameworks more suited to our civilizations. We industrialized our divine. We commercialized it, packaged it with material incentives, which pushed us to seek greater power, greater possibility, and sent us beyond the horizon pursuing the divine will. Our societies built and refined upon those values. Our principles refined upon those values, as did our traditions, our morals, our cultures. But more and more, the logic pushed the abstract aside. Institution calcified the divine and removed its ability to innovate, adapt, and to stay ahead. So the abstract instead leaned towards where it could. Science, philosophy, the concepts and wonders still lying beyond view. It was there we focused our creativity. There we sought the alternatives, and our tales and narrative lessons reflected this in turn. Our logic advanced more and more towards those directions, encroaching upon our stagnant divine. Soon, the logic began to press even beyond our terrestrial limits, and our tales followed in turn. More and more of us began to look upward, outward, and we were excited and driven to do so, at first. But through these pursuits, many of us began to find cracks in the old narrative, and through prying further, we began to see that narrative for what it truly was, just a facade. Regardless, we pushed further. Some of us even went to space. We breached the very barrier we once reserved exclusively for the divine. And there was nothing there. What we found was void. Our ancestors built that facade, that narrative, to protect us from void. But we had forgotten this, and upon breaching through these self-imposed confines, we have been reminded once more. Take a moment now and think back to before you were born, as in before you ever lived. Think back to that time. Remember what it was like. Exactly. There's nothing there. It's just void. And it's the last place any of us ever wish to return. But with the loss of our divine and all of our protective narratives, many of us are starting to get the sneaking suspicion that void is precisely where we're looking to return. For all of our devils and monsters and sufferings of our law, we have breached our own blockade to reveal the one ultimate terror we created that barrier to repel. And it's still there, it's still very real, and we have no escape. Because now, after breaching the stratosphere, we also see that it is everywhere. It is to every direction we can possibly go, and it is infinite. We cannot avoid it now. We cannot deny it. It's right there. And we have nothing within our precious arsenal of logic to deal with that. So we keep all reference to that out of our minds. The space race lost all cultural relevance and the public turned its back. That is a thing of science fiction. It exists on the screen. It is not real and is entirely controllable. Because that, if anything, is terrifying. That is nothing but death. In fact, it is worse than death. Death is at least the end of a story, and that is something we can comprehend. You can still have a heroic death, a meaningful death. There is still a chance to be with death. But what that is void. That is infinite. That is emptiness. That is the opposite of value, the opposite of security, of knowledge, of logic, the opposite of everything we are. You even hear some astronauts returning to Earth and talking of how the experience invigorated their belief in God. Or when the mind faces a truly shocking situation, it often places you within familiar situations so you don't go insane. I'm wondering if perhaps those astronauts instead peered out into that void. The reality of it broke their fucking minds and simply horrified them back into the protection of the old facade. We were once a child, looking up to the high diving platform, enthralled with the possibilities of that new frontier. But then we climbed the ladder, and we actually reached the top. We caught a glimpse of what that dive actually meant, and for the last 50 years we've been climbing back down. Think of the Sentinel Islands. that refuge of the last Stone Age culture on Earth. These are people living in complete, willful ignorance of all wonder and possibility that might be conceived, refusing to step out of their safe little box. I would refer to them as a society calcified by logic. Their logic is not high, but they are clearly refusing the abstract, and very much suffering for that choice. They are well aware other lands exist beyond the horizon. They've killed people from other lands and seen their tools and dress, yet they deny themselves and their children any curiosity to explore and learn. But before we might criticize them, we must first acknowledge how we ourselves do that very same thing. We too restrict ourselves to a tiny little island, adamantly refusing to address what lies plainly in abundance to all sides. Once we were excited to learn more of what that could be, but now that our logic has caught up and we actually have the ability to venture, we falter, because we no longer have anything to drive us on. The last reason we had to progress beyond the horizon was the cause of existential threat. Humanity was able to develop the nuclear bomb and first venture into the void because we were fearful someone else would do it first. Anyone who follows Jordan Peterson would have heard him speak of the repercussions of that loss of higher values, of faith or the logos in our society. You would also be familiar with Friedrich Nietzsche quote, "God is dead." I see this as reflective of that same notion. Now, Peterson disagrees with Nietzsche in regards to the religious institution, but both men seem well aware of what happens when our muse goes unleashed in lack of a divine cause. When Nietzsche announced that God is dead, he said that with remorse. Although we still look upwards into the stars for recreation, and some do dabble within that darkness, most of us now act as if it doesn't exist. Some even criticize space exploration as a waste of resources, as if to imply that the answer to all our concerns somehow does not lie out there. Quick, instant profits and gratification, that is what we now seek. We industrialize, optimize, monetize. We manipulate each other psychologically in order to pitch our superficial offerings. We give ourselves over to labels and titles, placing all our value there. Our abstract blocks upon quick rushes, quick fixes, quick answers, vice, sensation, and sexual indulgence. Dopamine is now our god. We consume ourselves within rushes of endorphin and social reinforcement, jumping from this hit to that one, this enemy to that one, only to then seek another before having to finally admit to ourselves that we simply have nothing else. And the hot takes. Everyone has a hot take. Twitter, TikTok, memes, bite-sized hits of absolute certainty, purposefully streamlined and simplified to allow us not to delve in too deep. We're completely assured that we've got all of this worked out. We display to the world our finely honed lifestyles and fine possessions, or our purposely minimal lifestyles because we need to display those too. We achieve enlightenment, because enlightenment is now a diploma to earn, a finish line to cross, a trophy to possess and proudly display, one that will raise us above all else. We humble brag how we don't need to impress. We virtue signal our moral superiority. We offer our 10 tips for success. Whatever success might mean in a society so adverse to human need. The alpha male, the independent woman, ever making moves and keeping it real, laying out for the rest of us how life is. Let's package up all these guys, fuel them up on that big dick energy they have, and send them to live out on Titan. Let's see how well they do out there. Now, there is nothing wrong with hot takes, and if you want to be alpha, go ahead, you do you. But don't think for a second that you've got all this worked out. See that speck right there? That speck is where you have life all worked out. Work it out there, where it's actually worth it, Dan. Go on, head out that way and lay it all down for us. I'll wait. Here's my hot take. No one knows. No one. Not one. Not any religious leader, no philosopher, no scientist, and certainly no influencer. We can play up the self-assurance all we like. We can build our little couch cushion forts to the sky, No one knows how this works, and there is nothing any of us can do to handle that. Take our leaders as an example. Empty, immoral, incompetent, scatterbrained performance artist fuck-ups they are. The last thing you could call any one of them is a leader. And that's exactly how we want them to be. They are there through our conscious decision because deep down inside we know we have nowhere to go. Where is a true leader possibly going to lead us to? There is only one place, and it is the last place any of us ever wish to go. But that's it. That's our option. It's either that or we stay with this, and none of us are happy with this. That terrifying immensity is the only way through. We must release ourselves to that nothing if we are to ever gain hope of understanding this. And even that journey into nothing likely itself has nothing waiting at the end. Nothing we do here compares to the resources and discoveries and perspectives awaiting us out there. All we have to look forward to here is terror. If we don't go to it willingly, it comes to us regardless, and we can rage against the dying of the light all that we wish. We all still meet void.
What really lies beyond us? Beyond physical bounds, beyond genetics, beyond lore. Is indulgence and vice truly all that we are? What use are mere animals to a galaxy of AI gods? Valencia by Danny Stray, available on Kindle ebook, From an Altered Aspect.
Humanity is an interplanetary species. It just is. Now, we haven't actually yet colonized another planet, but who really doubts that we will? Once we do that, the solar system will follow, and then beyond. The problem is that only a handful of us are even paying attention to what's happening out there. Our logic is pretty damn close to what we need. What we lack is the inspiration. Look at the Vulcans from Star Trek. Here we have this apparent spacefaring species which focuses everything towards logic and rationality. But the problem with Vulcans is that they're a load of shit. A species so dedicated towards logic would never have reached the stratosphere. They would never have even tried to leave the ground. There is no logical reason for going into space. There is no food there, no comfort, water is sparse, not even air can be found. Radiation kills us, zero gravity degrades us, nothing but death awaits such a pursuit. It is not logical to even try. So the majority of us do not even consider it as an option. The only thing that drives a species to push beyond its limits are dreams. Either the dreams of a great advancement or the perception of existential threat. Religion and faith once played vital importance in fueling that divine cause, and I agree with men like Jordan Peterson when they essentially mourn that loss. Now, despite myself being atheist and never having attended a church service, I can absolutely see the value in what institutional religions provide. You only need to look a little into psychology and history to see first why religion was there and why it remained. I agree with Peterson in the significance of that loss. Where I assume to differ is through lacking any desire to return to what we had. Regardless of what lack we may suffer in its wake, I feel we have lost those values for a very legitimate reason. When a child outgrows training wheels, just because he falls flat on his face doesn't mean he then goes back onto the training wheels. He has already caught a glimpse of something new, and you don't go back from that. We have lost that institution and those values because we evolved beyond their need. Logic caught up to the abstract, it has compromised the concept's foundations, and the old divine is no longer beyond reach. It is of this world now, not from out there, and it is no longer able to drive us. So God is dead, because that's exactly how growing up works. But we still lack that divine. So this is where the abstract thinkers must once more do what we evolved to do. We are the DMT hits of society. We reach in under the rug, draw out the shadows society refuses to address, hold them up in their faces and say, deal with this. I am trying to do this now with my books and these videos, but they'll only ever go so far, and frankly my theories may be dead wrong. Many of you will be much better at this than me. We need to throw ourselves willingly into the risk of public humiliation and once again start promoting our crazy ideas. The difference now, with our logic being so high, is that we need to remain adaptable for when our concepts fail. We need to learn, we need to research, we need to justify our concepts as best we can, while also not allowing those missing details to hold us back. The rational minds can nitpick in our ears all the semantics they like. They can give us all the reasons why it can't be done, and they can go fuck themselves, because that ain't the point. We make the impossible cool, to inspire the practical to make possible. We focus upon the forest, let them handle the trees. Think about yourself now living in a dome on Mars. Take time and really consider what that would be like. There you go. You just took the first step, the same one we needed to build that first sphere, and the same one that's going to take us out there. Not ready to focus out there? Okay, focus in here. Search your psychological foundations, delve within, and open those dark doors you feared so long. Face those fears and give yourself permission to indulge evil. Experience it, claim it, become it, learn it, enjoy it, defeat it. Then return and share that tale with the world. Provide the rest of us the tools we need to face it ourselves. We will need all the help we can get in handling that. Abstract thinkers need to once again explore and spread the deep ideas, the difficult ideas from which society hides. Stop apologizing for not fitting in, because not fitting in is the point. We evolved this way for a reason. We walk the peripheries, separate from the mainstream to watch society from afar. We lose ourselves within our daydreams because it is our job to compare the abstract alternatives with what we find actually in play. We pick the places where society deludes itself through convenience, and we lean in through that illusion and tell them how it really is. We must once more let the abstract fly, so we can conceptualize beyond marketability, beyond profit, beyond rationality, beyond even feasibility itself. We must seek dangerous art. We must create dangerous art, uncomfortable art that hits us, that uncovers our secrets and exposes our flaws. Art that presses upon the taboos of our culture and exposes us for the demons we truly are. Many are trying to suppress the taboos, censor the danger. Many try to shield others, whether they ask for it or not, in order to protect themselves from any possible cause for offense. Well, too bad. We've seen what comes from that already, and the results speak plainly. It's time to grow up, expose ourselves to trial, and prepare society for the times our demons threaten to rise. Times like now. We must stop settling for money as the sole reward, as if that is somehow enough. If you can't market these concepts, good. You're doing it right. You're doing it the way our species evolved to do it, how we naturally do it, without consideration nor restriction. And our analytical, rational-minded kin, we need to include them too. We evolved to talk some offensive bullshit because they need us to break them free of their corruptive stagnancy. They evolved to play as our counterweight because if you put us in charge, the species will last about 15 minutes. Aggressive, conservative, man, woman, and everything else in between. We evolved together. We strengthen each other, support each other, and need each other to do what humans do. We are not ants. We work together for the tribe, but we evolved individuality for its expansion. It is only the bridle of conformity, money, and personal status which now holds us back. All we need to do is stop arguing over tediums to once again realize and cherish each other's values, and together we will forge our divine.
Balance is everything as balance is all. May the Force never choose you. The Order of One, an original fan-created legend by Danny Stray. Available for free as ebooks from An Altered Aspect.
Do you want to advance to the next stage of evolution? Do you want to reclaim beauty and youth? Do you want unlimited resource and capability to unlock a level of potential you thought impossible to achieve? Do you want to change shape at will? I mean literally, do you want to become an actual shapeshifter? Well, all of those possibilities lie out there, and all we're doing right now is delaying the inevitable. God is dead. Logic has slain that dream and cleaned the slate for the new. The one true terror, however, remains, so we must now stage ourselves to meet it, driven by our new muse, the transcendence of humanity itself. We are the new divine. With our logic so high, we find ourselves sitting upon unimaginable opportunity, and we are squandering our potential. We are allowing the non-creative, the industrialist, the marketer to capture and restrain our ambition. Now, these people are integral to us. They too have evolved that way for a reason. We need them, but we cannot let them drive. The moment humanity seizes upon this new cause of us is the moment our abundant logic finds its fuel. But this is not at some distant goal we have to wait for. There is no longer a single end game. Once humanity achieves what one might regard as a transcendent state, the pursuit doesn't end. We just simply strive on for the next. Maybe this divine might feel underwhelming to you. It might feel as though it needs to deliver more emotional punch and inspire you to move. But think about it. Grandeur and awe are needs trained into us through our recent development of personal wealth. Before we lived within this world of abundance, being wealthy wasn't even a thing. Everything was for the tribe, and now the tribe is simply bigger. That simplicity, that lack of dazzle and flair is what makes this so profound. You need to learn man's religions. You don't even need language for this. There is nothing closer to God than this. Humanity is now the end game, and there is no end. This is a goal from which you can receive constant physiological reward right now. There is no doctrine to get in our way, no institution, no hierarchies or titles to dictate who's wiser than the rest. No collection plate will be handed around, and you are the only judge of your actions. Are you taking us forward, or are you taking us back? That notion lies at the heart of all things. Your choice of pursuits, your actions at work, your approach to friends and family, the pursuit of religion, the way you see the world and the direction it takes. Through simply making that assessment and making a habit of doing so, you become more conscious by default. You become self-analytical. You become self-aware. If you want to hold on to a belief in God, go ahead. This does not interfere with that. But in placing that phrase, that concept into the social consciousness, and the more of us we have taking time to advance the whole, the sooner we ourselves become gods. Now, there are endless intricacies to be worked out here. The very meaning of advancement, for example, is going to differ greatly between individuals. But that is another beauty of this muse. It is an endless path of fluidity and adaptation, which is precisely what human beings are. The more of us that expand outward, the more knowledge and reference we bring back in. Our specializations now work for the tribe. Not this tribe to gain over that tribe, but for the tribe. Think about it. Seriously, from this moment on, think about it. It really is that simple. And through that simplicity, it becomes divine. Some may look now upon this chaotic era as the fall of something great. The Romans mourned the fall of their empire as well. Do you want to go back to Rome? Our empire destroys millions of our kin for profit. Weapons and reconstruction make money, so we go out of our way to deconstruct for profit. We delay the electric car for profit. We make ourselves sick with toxic food for profit. We refuse to address this calamity and instead develop reactive medicine for profit. We make ourselves sterile and risk the extinction of our species for profit. Do you want to go back there? Let this world go. We know what we have isn't working. It's just simply what we have. What we're scared of is what comes in its place. But this coming change does not need to be violent. It doesn't have to be a collapse, but simply a reform. Reform on the individual level, which incrementally redirects the whole. Violence comes through panic. Panic comes through surprise and insecurity, and we remove that insecurity by shoring ourselves now in our path. With each of us taking on this responsibility for the whole, focusing ourselves in here and out there, humanity might even have a chance. Once more, we find our divine. With our abstract now focus, we find the fuel, and our immense logic can now finally effectively provide the craft. This is the best chance we have to face that void, because now there is no more them, only us. Humanity against its oldest foe. Now we start letting things go, and we make ourselves accountable for our behavior. Our anxieties, our grievances with this person or that issue, we're just putting those aside. We can get out of our own way now and start working towards the tribe. Now we share, we encourage, we tolerate and forgive. Now we drop the barriers, the labels, the separators. Now we set tedium aside. Now we lift our heads as one to jump forth into void, and that infinite darkness shall reel in awe of the light that shall bloom from this world of gods.